and good afternoon. I'm glad to welcome you in what I like to call the best panel of the show. We will discuss the circular economy, both from a policy perspective and a tech perspective. And let me immediately introduce you, our amazing panelists. I will present you one by one to introduce the debate and all the insights that will stem from this discussion. And let me start from Paloma Zapata. Paloma, can you raise your hands? We love you, Paloma. Paloma is the founder, the leader of Sustainable Travel International. She has been at the forefront of sustainable tourism, and her effort has been to maximize tourist contribution to environmental conservation and community well-being. She has 15 years of experience in sustainable tourism, has implemented many impactful initiatives in 26 nations around the globe, and now she manages the organization's efforts to engage tourism industry in climate action through carbon measurement, carbon offsetting, and education. Welcome, Paloma, and please help me with a clap to her. Second, I'm glad to introduce you Connor Bryant. Connor Bryant is the CEO of Rubbish Ideas. What a brilliant name for a circular economy product designs agency. He's a passionate advocate for sustainability and regeneration. He's an expert in designing circular economy and policies and advisory. He combines his knowledge of design principles with a deep commitment to environmental responsibility. A clap to Connor, please. Third, Elena Doms. Elena was born and raised in the Arctic. Seeing her childhood home melt away inspired Elena to search for impact. After spending 11 years at MasterCard, she quit a role as a director, climate quitting. And in partnership with C Biotech, a leading biotech company, she launched Earth Plus with a bold mission: create the largest soil and CO2 cleanup in history. Welcome, Elena. A big clap for you. Last but not least, Anna Bizanti. Anna is the head of sustainability, head of ESG, head of policy at Q Technologies and at their sister company, Circular Fuels. Anna spent 5 years in Q, encompassing roles in strategy, in commerce, in operations. Her leadership extends to business case economics, modeling, advocacy, sustainability initiatives, and strategy. And now she has a very similar role in Circular Fuels, that is a venture with Demeter, acting on the LPG and off-grid energy sector defossilization. A big clap to you, Anna. I will take my chair next to the panel, but I want to start with a question, a very genuine question to make our discussion a bit more human. And this question is the same for each of our panelists, and is: what brings you here? What sparked your drive to make an impact to help our sustainability cause? And let's start with Paloma with this question.
Thank you. So I come from the Caribbean nation of the Dominican Republic. And so I grew up in pristine environments and beautiful beaches. And I have seen how the effects of over-tourism and climate change has really exacerbated natural resources and alienated our communities and societies. So that was the main inspiration for me to start working in sustainable tourism. Again, because seeing that tourism is both a culprit as well as a victim when it comes to climate change really inspired me to work in the sustainable tourism field. And this is why I'm leading the efforts with Sustainable Travel International.
Connor?
Good question. Well, I can't really answer that without talking about my mum. My mum is a sustainability expert and author that's been doing this for about 35, 40 years. So I didn't really have much choice about the environmentalism. I was indoctrinated into the world of green, but I did get to choose which issue I made my hill to die on, and I chose rubbish because I always had an interest in design. I did product design at university, and I realized that as product designers, our industry bore a massive responsibility for the amount of waste we saw in the world. Waste is a design problem. It was created by the companies that designed those products, not the individuals. So I'm here to solve it.
Let's continue with, probably start with Amna to change the flow.
Just checking the mic works. So for me, I was always passionate about sustainability, but I didn't want to just do it in my personal life. So what better way to do it than pursue a career where you can have an impact? And luckily, I came through Q Technology and was really attracted by their motto back then, which was delivering a world beyond fossil fuels. And that really caught my attention, and that's where my journey in sustainability became. And little did I know I'd become a waste expert, although when I tell my friends, they just imagine me carrying wheelie bins around. But there's a lot more to the waste sector and actually the impact it has on global emissions, and the fact that you can do something with waste and address the energy problem, which we'll talk a bit more about later, has enabled me to grow and develop my career in this, and really keen to make a difference.
And of course, let's go with Elena.
So there are two reasons why I'm here. The first one is, of course, me seeing my childhood home literally melt away. So I grew up in the environment of minus 30 degrees, polar nights and darkness, and polar days and full light in summer. Aurora borealis lights as well, absolutely stunning. And now seeing the temperature change, that minus 30 is even considered abnormal there, and in winter it can have temperatures above zero. For me, that's what really drives me, because when I did my degree in energy and climate, I realized how important the Arctic is for the rest of the world, how actually Arctic warming 4 times faster than the rest of the world impacts everything on the planet and every single one of us. And my second reason is my 2 little kids. I'm honestly slightly terrified about their future. It's the same for all the kids in the world, and I felt like I really need to do something that I would feel I'm making it all better for them.
And probably I also had a little bit from myself. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Andrea. I'm actually from Tuscany. I've been leading the BCG, Boston Consulting Group effort in sustainability, and now I have the honor of coordinating the team of Illuminum. We are probably now the leading sustainability information platform, one of the leading sustainability data platform. And I also grew up in an environment full of beauty, where everything is in an harmonious piece. And I see the fragility of our environment, and I see the risk of losing everything. And at the same time, I see the beauty and the message of you, my friends. And I feel that it's now our time to be on the right side of history. So without any further about me, I want to start with a question to you, Paloma. You know, we all traveled here to London. Some of you came from remote countries, some of you arrived just from another district in the city, but all of us have been impacted by sustainable travel. So I want to start with a big picture and ask you, what is happening in sustainable travel? Mm-hmm. Which technology are reshaping it? Mm-hmm. Which challenges are we facing?
Yes. So in sustainable travel, I mean, thinking about first, climate policy, that's really helping tourism businesses to really start becoming more responsible. So the climate disclosure, it's really a first step. It's just really a first step. And we start learning as far as what is actually the impact of the tourism industry on the environment. We have always been looking at tourism development as just a number as far as tourism arrivals and how much money they leave behind, but there are a lot of impacts of tourism on the environment, which is why I say tourism is actually responsible for about 8% of global green gas climate emissions. So that's the starting point. We also know that in a tourism journey, you have multiple steps in your journey, and about 50% of carbon emissions are actually produced by the transportation mode. Typically flight, but it could be your train, it could be your car. So starting from that premise, the first initial changes that are happening in technology is changing the infrastructure in tourism. Or the infrastructure in transportation. So that's where we're seeing a lot of the investments that are coming in when we're talking about electric vehicles, for example. A lot of hotels, especially in Europe and the United States, are now providing the infrastructure for electric vehicles to plug in. We're seeing changes as far as the train infrastructure here in Europe as well. There's a lot of investment in sustainable aviation fuels, but it'll take the biggest challenge here is changing the infrastructure. The technology is practically there. But the issue is now the transition in adapting into those technologies. So that's what we see the biggest challenge in the tourism sector is actually implementing, is actually businesses trying to stay afloat during this transition. And dealing, of course, with the scrutiny that comes in from the market because they need to do things right, they need to do things right away. So those are the biggest challenges that I see in tourism. We do have the technology in place, mainly really focusing on transportation and renewable energies, but there is a need for that infrastructure to be in place and the investments to be in place for us to be able to reach our net zero goals.
That's very provocative. I don't know if you heard, but it's on us, ragazzi. So technology is there, the infrastructure, and our action is probably what is missing. Mm-hmm. Connor, you're the only man on this stage, so I feel it's already a fast sign of the action that in conferences we start implementing. But let me go to you. You look at a circular economy, you advocate for closed-loop systems, right? Is exactly what Paloma said, that technology is already there, or technology is actually reshaping how you approach the circular economy?
Yes, well, I mean, I'd say I'm a big believer in the fact that we already have all of the technology that's required to save the world. I don't think we can use, waiting for new technology as an excuse. In many ways, we've known what we need to do for a very long time. The time is now to do it. And, with closed-loop thinking, is that, the circular economy, closed loop, these sound like complicated words, but at its base, it's incredibly intuitive. It's so simple a child would understand it. It's that we need to make our things back into the same thing, and that way we can keep doing it forever. And it's really simple, but it makes a lot of sense for a lot of really obvious reasons. For example, if you take coffee cups, okay? The world currently consumes about 500 billion disposable cups per year. I'll repeat that, 500 billion, so you've got an understanding of scale. That's a hell of a lot of cups, year on year on year. Now, we already have the capabilities in my company to take coffee cups and 3D print them into furniture. So we could 3D print a load of furniture for a Starbucks made from their old coffee cups. But there aren't enough Starbucks in the world to be filled with 3D printed furniture from coffee cups to recycle all of the coffee cups. So where you have non-closed loop recycling solutions, taking coffee cups, recycling them into furniture, it sounds great, but often there is a mismatch of supply and demand. Whereas, of course, if you were to take those coffee cups and you were to make them all into new coffee cups, well, we're going to need 500 billion cups the next year and the year after that. So the demand remains consistent, the supply of the raw material meets the demand. So in simple terms, it practically makes sense. It's also much more intuitive. Customers do not understand complex sustainability topics because they don't have a science degree in it, and they have, frankly, bigger fish to fry in their normal lives. So you need to make doing the right thing intuitive, and what is more intuitive than this product will be made back into new versions of this product? It's something that every consumer can get behind. You don't need any complex understanding of sustainability to do so. So closed loop thinking, I think, is a really good way that businesses, can become part of the circular economy. Your products do not have to be closed loop to be circular, but it is probably the easiest and best route to get there, and the easiest to communicate as well.
Thank you, Connor. Now I feel a bit cornered. As I'm a tech entrepreneur, I feel that technology is not necessary anymore, or taken as a joke is not anymore the central play. But let me bring the next question to you, Elena. And I think all of us, we are fascinated by this childhood in the Arctic. And I think I would like to start by understanding a bit more about what is Earth Plus doing. What actually you brought with you on stage?
So allow me to start with the story of how Earth Plus was born. It's born out of Belgium for the reason that it's one of the most contaminated countries. A few years ago, there was a big scandal around forever chemicals. Now, forever chemicals is everything that makes things non-stick and water resistant. So our phones, our laptops, our clothes, our Teflon frying pans, they're in everything because they're very useful. The problem is the production process causes this pollution that spreads really far. So it's been found in the blood of almost all Europeans and people around the world. It's been found in blood of polar bears, in the Arctic ice, and it just stays there in nature. And in us as well, because the only way to get rid of these forever chemicals is to burn them at 1,400 degrees. So scientists fear they will stay there for millennia and they will intoxicate us and cause different diseases. In fact, global healthcare costs related to them and societal ones for the cleanup are 17.5 trillion US dollars per year. And we don't even know about it, they're invisible. Now, in Belgium, there is one of the largest producers in the world, and that's why there was this big scandal. They went and they measured people's blood for forever chemicals, and it was obviously very high. So they advised this company to look for solutions, and the traditional solutions were to excavate this ground and dump it somewhere else. Obviously not a solution either. And I met this really inspiring entrepreneur who is my partner now, Frederik Verstraete, who collaborated with the University of Hasselt, and for the first time ever, they ran a pilot to try to clean this contamination with power of plants. It was really groundbreaking because they proved that plants can extract these chemicals. But the second discovery was that they store these chemicals in the leaves of the plant. So the stems remain absolutely clean, and so does the pollen for the bees. The research was done specifically on industrial hemp, because afterwards they split up the polluted parts, they destroyed the leaves safely, and from the contaminated stems they created circular materials. Examples of them are reinforced hemp wood, which is stronger than typical wood, and you can use it in construction, and biocomposites, which is if you can make this, you can make anything. Porsche made circular car body out of it. BMW uses it for interiors. We specifically use it for traffic poles that are now being imported as tropical wood or steel from India. We can now make them locally and fully circular, but you can make loads of things out of it. And when I got to know this research, I started digging more into forever chemicals and contamination of soils, and we were like, we have to clean the world. Just in Europe, there are 100,000 hotspots. In the US, 50,000. Globally, there is no even a database. And I thought, we need to create the next ocean cleanup, but for soils. And that's how we created Earth Plus, with a bold mission to have the largest soil and CO2 cleanup with nature. And we grow these plants with superpowers like industrial hemp, or sometimes we use fungi and other nature-based solutions to clean up soils or to restore soils and push the deserts back. And then these plants, they also capture carbon, and we keep this carbon away from the atmosphere through fully circular materials. Circularity is really important because we want the carbon to stay where it is. Or through biochar, which we talk a lot about biochar for carbon removal, but not a lot of people know how it looks like. So you can come afterwards and have a look. It's like this black fiber over here, but you can check after the panel. This is the black gold, because this keeps carbon out of atmosphere for over 100 years. And if you mix it back in the soil, it brings the soils back and restore it. And if we just restore 0.5% of our soils, make them sequester more carbon, we already bridged the gap between the plant emissions reduction and what we need to have for 1.5 degrees limit. So nature has amazing potential, soils do, and we are really on a mission to supercharge nature and, of course, use technology for transparency to make nature sexy again.
Wow. I'm impressed by the power of concrete things, concrete actions. Anna, now we move to you. I think we had already a good picture of what is happening in travel, in tourism, what is happening in events, like in the daily life, what is happening like in the natural solutions. You have another incredible expertise that is looking at hard-to-abate industries, transport, energy. Actually, what is happening there? What is the change taking place in this hard-to-abate space?
So I'll start first with just two data sets, which, as a caveat, they are different data sets. One is fossil fuels consumption contributes to over 80% of our global emissions. And the second one, so obviously that means we really need to reduce that significantly and move away from fossil fuels. And the second being waste. The waste sector contributes to over 20% of methane-related emissions, and I'm sure everyone around the room is very well aware of how harmful methane is in the atmosphere and to our planet. And just starting with those two metrics, our technology looks at using waste, reducing methane emissions, and using waste as a replacement for fossil fuels. And typically, and what most of us around here are probably familiar with, is waste to energy in the traditional form, or landfill as waste treatment pathways. I won't go to how bad landfill is. Waste to energy, unfortunately, is, whereas it's a better alternative to landfill, it's still not good enough. In the UK, once coal leaves the grid, incineration will be the most carbon-intensive electricity source into the grid. Coupled with incineration emits, dioxins, PCBs, and harmful air quality, negatively impacting air quality. So what we are looking at is, okay, we have those two problems, and actually Q years ago when it started was also looking at waste to electricity. But then we realized, hang on a second, electricity is being rapidly decarbonized. There were unprecedented innovations and scale-ups, especially in wind and solar, that has significantly helped electricity decarbonize. So using waste to make electricity was no longer really sustainable, even though we could make it more efficiently and emit less harmful pollutants or none at all. So we started looking at hard-to-abate sectors, and we realized actually we take waste through an advanced gasification process, which is a thermal treatment of over 1,000 degrees. We can make a clean synthesis gas that we call syngas. And that syngas is made of hydrogen and carbon monoxide mainly, and that's a key building block molecule that you can use actually as it is to substitute natural gas. So one of our major clients is Pilkington. If you have a BMW or a Fiat, you'll see Pilkington glass on your windows. We also work with the largest LPG suppliers in the other side of what we do, which is we can upgrade that syngas into an LPG substitute, into biofuels like methanol or diesel, into hydrogen as well. So what that therefore means is actually you started with waste, which is a problem, but with innovation in technology, you can convert that waste into high-value molecules that can replace fossil fuels and help these sectors defossilize. And, we've had independent GHG assessments done, and we're able, on the renewable portions, to save above 70% in comparison to fossil fuels, and that's without any carbon capture, utilization, or storage. With carbon capture, utilization, and storage, because we're a carbon capture-ready process, we even start transitioning from low carbon into negative carbon, which is another way that we can help hard-to-abate sectors, especially you mentioned sustainable aviation fuel. Those kind of sectors will be really hard to decarbonize, but if you have technologies that can go beyond just being low carbon and being negative carbon, then you have true offsetting of CO2, and you start to, use and drive a new true form of circularity where, my last point is we talked a lot about recycling and reducing waste, whether in tourism or events. Our process actually targets those wastes that you can't, unfortunately, recycle, which there's a lot of. There's millions of tons right now that's not recycled, that are going to incineration and go in landfill, and we focus and specialize on addressing those wastes, so we won't be, interrupting recycling trends, and we're all for recycling. Also, you can call us chemical recycling when we can take plastic, break it down to syngas, and make plastic again, by the way. So there's also that form of true carbon circularity, but it's still equally impactful when we're making fuels for the off-grid energy sector or for transport sectors. And I think we need to start changing our mindset that, yes, waste is a problem, but actually it's also an opportunity. We need to stop digging the ground for fossil fuels and use what's above the ground that we're struggling to manage as it currently is.
Thank you, Amna. We have a lot to reflect on this frontier of circularity, right? We need to admit there are certain products, certain types of waste that cannot be recycled. And our intelligence should be deployed there to find solutions and not leave it as an unsolved problem. But let me stay exactly on this concept of circularity, and I want to go back to you, Paloma, on tourism, right? So how can we integrate circularity in the tourism industry? Which benefits can we expect?
Sure. Yeah. So from the lens of decarbonization, which is the climate crisis that we're trying to really focus on in the work that we're doing, one of the first things that we are looking in the tourism industry is localizing supply chains. That's really important, I think, also in the circular economy, and it creates better products. It shortens, the supply line, so you can shorten also the carbon emissions that are produced from bringing those supplies, and you can work with the local communities to really support them in economic development. What we see in these, for example, island nations, is that 8 out of 10 tourism dollars actually escapes the tourism, the local economy. So there's one very important, sustainability benefit of localizing supply chains. So you have the decarbonization as well as, boosting, local economies. Of course, we always have the issue of locals being able to supply the industry with the right product and the right quality. So there's a lot of work to be done there. Again, talking about the infrastructure and the local policies. Another area is waste management. So this is why it's great to be with these folks on this stage. Very important. The tourism industry creates a lot of waste. One of the main areas is food waste, for example. When we go to the resorts, when we are in cruise lines, there's a lot of food waste. When we do buffets, events as well produces a lot of food waste. And all of this waste, if it goes into a landfill, actually produces a lot of carbon. So I think the stats is that all the waste together emits the same amount of carbon as as one nation. So it's important to reduce waste for the circular economy, and also in a lot of these destinations, they rely on landfills. They don't have recycling facilities. They don't have the technology. So also reducing waste that goes to recycling, like plastics, is very important. Sustainable aviation fuels, we can't mention it enough. It's super important, especially going to these far places, that we can have cleaner means and ways to arrive to the destinations. So those are the main areas. And then there are new areas. For example, now we're having a lot of sargassum blooms in the Caribbean, which is a nuisance. It detracts, from the beauty of the natural environment in the destination. And there is an opportunity to turn that sargassum into biofuels or into other byproducts. So there's an opportunity there. And there's going to be more and more of that opportunity. Just this morning, I saw that there's an algae bloom in Thailand that's going to affect the tourism industry as well as fisheries. And this is an unprecedented, algae bloom that they have in this environment. So there's more and more opportunity, to deal with these issues through, circular economy and the tourism industry.
Thank you, Paloma. And for our audience, let me say, Paloma is absolute thought leader when it comes to sustainable travel for islands. It's actually such an interesting perspective, because many things that for us are given for granted cannot be replicated in those special, fragile ecosystems. So I invite all of you to have a chat at the end of the panel with Paloma on this topic that is absolutely fascinating. I continue with you, Connor. You have a leading advisory on circular economy, so you work with companies, right? Maybe we should go to the substance of it. How do you envision companies measuring, enhancing the circular economy? And maybe looking at us in the audience, how we, customers, can help this to happen?
Very good question. Well, earlier I was saying we don't need any new technology, and I stand by that we're not waiting for some fantastical carbon capture sort of machine to save us, but a technology that we could definitely better use is tracking and data gathering. If you go online now, a small number of companies, Facebook, Google, etc., know everything about you. They've tracked every bit of your digital activity to build a personal profile of you. And of course, they use that data to sell you more stuff and to manipulate your political opinions, which are possibly not great things. But we could take that same mentality to how we use resources. We could track resources throughout their entire life cycle. In fact, we could never let them go. And then we could ensure that they could stay in closed-loop systems forever. So that's a core part of delivering the circular economy is going to be installing traceability systems, supply chain traceability, tracking to monitor your products and your waste all throughout its life cycle so we know what happened to it, where it ends up. Therefore, we can get it back. It's like a map to where it is. But so we can also track the impacts that are occurred as it moves throughout the system. So we can track the energy consumption and water usage, along the way. So as companies, I think we need to take a lot more responsibility for tracking our products as they go out onto the market, thinking about the fact that it's not just your job to sell something, it's your job to think, I've created this product and I should be a steward of the materials that I've put into this product until those materials are put to a better use somewhere else in the future. And ultimately, this links back to what I was saying about sort of closed loop thinking, is that as a business, if you make a physical product, the best person to recycle your product is you, especially if that product is complex, because you have all of the manufacturing facilities required to make that product, and you use all of the materials that are in it to make your products. So no one is going to be better at recycling it than you, and therefore the challenge I'd put to, if you can't recycle your product, probably nobody else can, so you probably need a better product. And with that in mind, obviously the key challenge is getting it back. So tracking plays a fundamental role in that, and how we as consumers can be involved or in this process is deliberately choosing companies that are making a good effort of supply chain traceability or taking proper responsibility for their products. So there are now quite a few companies you can purchase products from who will take them back at their end of life. There are actually some great companies where you can't even buy their products anymore. You can only lease them. And this is something that's a really exciting part of the circular economy, is this idea of that as a company we could provide services as opposed to providing products, and therefore we are responsible for maintaining the equipment, the tool that provides that service, and ensuring that it never goes to waste. And I think that's a really fundamental business model shift that can really unlock circularity. And it's also really good for your business. It switches people from being one-off customers to repeat customers. So that's a broad way of answering that question.
Very powerful way, Connor. And I actually love this example. We don't buy, we lease for just some time before being returned. And maybe like the biggest example of it is how we should approach the natural environment, right? Is your focus, Elena? I think all of us, after 2 days in the conference, I think we are very well aware of the sustainability challenges. Maybe what you can help us understand is why nature-based solutions are so essential for carbon capturing, are so essential for soil regeneration.
Well, allow me to be a little bit of a devil's advocate. We sometimes think that technology will save us all, that it will solve all of our issues, right? But according to WWF, in the last 10 years, nature removed 54% of extra greenhouse gas emissions. 54. Not technology, nature did that. And yes, we need technology. We need technology to supercharge nature, but nature has all the solutions. Nature has been circular for decades. And I think we have forgotten that we are nature, that we are part of nature. So what do? We dump things in nature, right? Forgetting that it comes back to us in our food chains, that we eat this food again, that it damages our soils, pollutes them, that it runs off into the oceans and actually kills phytoplankton, those tiny microorganisms that produce over 50% of our oxygen and are the start of our food chains. So we're collapsing our own life support systems. Now, nature had a little bit of a bad image in the carbon capture space in the last few years because there were carbon credits for rainforests that were not there anymore. So we started turning into these enormous carbon capture machines that take a lot of resources to produce and are very inefficient. But that was only because of lack of transparency. So now here is where technology comes into play. How can we make sure that we make nature-based solutions as transparent as we can in order to make sure that we are flowing money into nature restoration? And for example, that's what we are looking at in Earth Plus. How can we use technology, satellite data, AI, machine learning to see our impact on the ground, on the soils, near real time, so that we can report it back transparently to everyone. And now the second reason, an example why nature-based solutions are so important, if you look at the carbon removal space, we need 10 gigatons of CO2 removed by 2050. Now, so far, 0.05% of that was delivered. And from what has been purchased by companies, only 2% was really realized. And if you look at what really made that happen was biochar, a nature-based solution. In combination with technology, of course, because you need pyrolysis to make that happen. But it's biochar based on nature that really delivered carbon removal. So nature is really key. We need to remember we are nature, and that's the only way forward how we can thrive as humanity.
I think I should stop speaking about technology now. We are nature, and nature is probably the most advanced technology. Let me take another angle here. I think with you, we can look at nature also in its role for sustainable energy. And probably something we have not discussed yet is how policy, how regulation can actually bring us in the right direction, can actually make all of this nature sustainable energy possible.
I shouldn't walk off because this might be about technology. Sure. And I was just debating in my head if I should start with the positives or the negatives, but I think it's probably I'll start with the negatives and then move on to the positive to end on a good note. But first, I just want to say I really agree with the point about we are nature, and we shouldn't forget that prevention is the best methodology. But in the case, at the end of the day, humans will always generate waste, and how we handle that waste is where we come in. And on the note of policies, I think there's some really great policy developments. However, one that we haven't been a complete fan of is the EU taxonomy classifying waste as outside of the green taxonomy because of the zero waste movement, which we're very supportive of. But the definition of zero waste is, I would say, controversial. Humans will never stop generating waste. So defining zero waste or any zero waste as just the prevention of any waste generation, I think we're not a total fan of. And that has led to, therefore, policy classifying as it not, I wouldn't say not sustainable, because EU still has a circular economy action plan, which will acknowledge technologies like ours. But coming back to the point, humans will always generate waste, and part of that will be non-recyclable waste, and there's an opportunity to use that waste to generate sustainable energy. So I would say that's not been the most positive development, but we're seeing some backtracking through the circular economy action plan, and under green loan principles, our type of circularity is truly acknowledged, and especially in sustainable aviation fuel, recycled carbon fuels methodology, there's a huge move towards supporting technologies that can take non-recyclable waste and transform them into valuable end products. And that will bring me to, and I think actually UK is doing a good job in leading it, is starting to incentivize technologies and investing in technologies. And both Department for Transport has led on the recycled fuels methodology and looking at using waste and double incentivizing waste into SAF or waste into sustainable aviation fuel, or waste into diesel or waste into hydrogen to defossilize transport. Department for Energy Security and Net Zero is also looking at hydrogen BECCS and acknowledges greenhouse gas removal pathways using waste, which is huge developments. But then my concern about that is, as Q, we like to classify ourselves as downstream or end molecule agnostic. And the challenge we're seeing, and I'm sure a lot of you will know a lot about the hydrogen hype. We also are supportive of hydrogen. We've been funded to demonstrate hydrogen production next year, which will be a world first waste to hydrogen production facility. But what we are very concerned about is government and policy is trying to choose a winner and trying to choose large scales where we still need small scale solutions, as you talked about with regards to, islands and tourism. So I would just food for thought, and what we're looking to work on is others who would advocate with us that government needs to create a level playing field and let the market decide. Off-grid energy is equally hard to abate as transport fuels. Why is it that there's immense support for transport fuels, but off-grid energy is forgotten, even though actually off-grid energy for rural homes and businesses is a necessity? Equally, industrial fuels as well are more forgotten than transport fuels. So there's been a lot of good policy developments, but I think there's a disconnect with A, picking a winner, B, picking, go big or go home mentality, and C, not fully realizing that waste is a resource and an opportunity and prioritizing that not for electricity, but for harder to abate sectors. But not wanting to end on a negative note, there are developments. They just need all of us in this room to work together to make sure they stay on the right track.
Dear friends, we are precisely on time. I have a million questions that I would like to add and keep asking our panelists here. But I just suggest, please join us now. We're gonna have a break. Join us for more of a personal one-on-one chat for this session altogether. I think it's time to close here the debate. I wanna hear your clap, your thank you for all of you, for Anna, for Paloma, for Connor, for Elena, for the fantastic inspiration, and of course. See you later for the next panel of the London Climate Tech Show.
Thank you.